My name is Emily Miller, and I am interviewing
Richard Torpy.
and the year you were born,
I was born in 1931
where you were born,
in Philadelphia.
and where you currently live.
I currently have residence in Toms River, New Jersey.
What war were you in?
Well, I was in during peacetime, but the Cold War was going on. I was in from November of 1956 until November of 1958, and I spent the last 18 months in Germany. And the Russians were about 40 miles away from where we were.
What branch were you in?
I was in the United States Army Infantry, 3rd Armored Division, 37th Armored Infantry Battalion, which then became the 52nd Battalion of the 52nd Infantry.
And why did you pick that branch?
I didn't. They picked me.
Okay, so you were drafted.
I was drafted. In those days, we had pretty much a universal draft. And I was fortunate. I was in the last class to graduate and be in the military for 2 years active duty. They changed the law after I was inducted, so the fellows who graduated the year after me, they could opt for 6 months active duty and 20 years in the reserves. So they sent me to 2 years.
Did you have a hard time, coping with being drafted and everything like that?
I had just finished law school, and having gone through all from the prep to Penn to Temple Law, I didn't have a hard time because I had discipline. I knew how to discipline myself, and when I got out of basic training after 8 weeks, I was in wonderful shape. Yeah, good. Everything about it was good. The food was good. We were down in Texas, in Fort Hood, and we coped, and everybody was in the same boat. And then after 8 weeks of basic training, I was selected to go to clerk school because almost everyone there was a college graduate, and we learned how to do clerical work for the Army. Although we carried our weapons and did the drilling and all that. And then I got back to my old company, and I was the assistant company clerk until I went to Germany. And the first day I got to Germany, I was summoned from Company C of the 37th Armored Infantry Battalion to Headquarters Company, and I became the legal department of the entire battalion. Yeah, pretty good.
So can you explain in detail more of the boot camp training and experience?
They got us up at 5 o'clock. We didn't like being up at 5 o'clock. But since everybody else had to get up, it wasn't so bad. They lights out at 10 o'clock, so they made sure you got 7 or 8 hours of sleep every night. The beds were pretty comfortable. Our barracks were only like 2 or 3 years old, so everything was fairly modern, and the mess hall was nearby, and everybody was in the same boat.
And you said the food was really good?
The food wasn't like mother-made, but the food was good. The Army did buy first-class food, and the professional chefs in the Army, they did a pretty good job of cooking it. Yeah. The only people who complained were the Southerners, because we weren't serving Southern food. Yeah.
Do you remember your instructors?
In the Army?
Yes.
I don't remember their names. I know I have them because I kept a log of my entire time in the service, but I really got into the log when I was in Germany. I majored in European history at Penn, and I was able to visit so many places. The instructors were, well, they were all veterans of the Korean War, which had only been over for a few years. That was from about 1950 to 1953. They were all veterans who decided to stay in the Army, and they were pretty decent people. The people in Germany were even better. Yeah.
So they weren't harsh or mean?
No, they were They were tough, but they were fair, and if you kept your nose clean, you'd get along pretty well. When I was in basic training, I was a squad leader, so I had 8 or 9 men supposedly under me. And then when I got to clerical school, I was a class leader, so I was responsible for 40 men. And the sergeants down there who really ran the school, which clerical school, lasted 8 weeks. Um, they were they were pretty good. They had a pretty good deal being down there. They could have been in Korea. They could have been anywhere, but they were in Texas, and the weather wasn't too bad.
Did you participate in any major battles?
No major battles, except running for the front of the chow line 3 times a day. Remember, there was no war going on, but the Cold War was on, and relations between the Soviet Union and the United States were we could have gone to war at any time when I was over there, and we had once a month we had an alert, and it generally like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, all the sirens went off, and we had to scramble and get to our duty post, and in case there was going to be a Russian invasion. So we did that at least once a month.
So you saw a lot of combat?
Well, it's hard to say combat. We were ready for combat. Then we went out into the field and lived in tents for the whole time I was there. We did it for 3 months out of 18 months, and that was just as you were getting ready for war. And at that particular place, it was a spot called Grafenwehr near the Czechoslovakian border, and the Russians were maybe 5 miles away, and you didn't see them, but you knew they were there.
Did you make any close friends while in the Army?
Oh yes, particularly in clerk school, and we all got transferred to Germany, and we saw a lot. Some became chaplain's assistants, some became courts and boards clerks like I was, and that means that I was doing the work in my battalion. My job was judge advocate general. I handled the court martials. I set them up. I was the court reporter, and then I gave reports to the commanding officer, and then they sent it on down to Frankfurt, which was the headquarters of the 7th Army. And we were only like 18 miles from the city of Frankfurt on the Main, or Frankfurt am Main, as we say in German.
Are you friends with any of them still now?
No, I think most of them have died. Very few of my close friends were from Philadelphia. I attended a few weddings the year or two after I got out, and then we sort of lost contact because they all had families. They were in Brooklyn and New York and Western Pennsylvania, and one couple from Delaware. But you drift away.
Mm-hmm.
There was one fella I was friendly with. He was from South Philadelphia, actually, and I only lost contact with him 2 or 3 years ago. Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the day your service ended?
Oh, I remember it very well. Who can't remember? We came over from Germany by boat, and we had like 4 or 5 days left. We may have arrived in Brooklyn, the Brooklyn Naval Base, the Brooklyn Army Base, I guess it was, at the 1st of November, and my mother was there. And I hadn't seen her in a year and a half. Dad couldn't get off. And I said, well, I may be home for dinner tonight. Well, instead they put us on a train to Virginia, and we wound up in Camp Meade, Fort Meade, Virginia, and we did meaningless work for 4 or 5 days. But there was a crisis going on in Lebanon. I think it was in Lebanon, and we thought that war would break out. And if the Lebanese and the Israelis went to war, the Russians would come in on the side of the Lebanese, and we might be drawn into war on the side of the Israelis. So it was a little bit touch and go. We weren't worried because we were back in the States, and our replacement troops were already in Germany, and they could have flown them down to Israel that whole area overnight. Yeah.
So did you join a veteran organization after?
No, I did not. I wanted to, but I was not eligible to join the American Legion because I had served during a period of time where there was no active combat going on. So, and my dad had been a member of the Legion. He was in the Navy during World War One. I wanted to join, but they started another organization called the Sons of the Legion, and they were children of veterans, and so I was able to join the Sons of the Legion. I only stayed in there for 2 or 3 years. I got married and babies came along, and other things I needed to do.
So can you state what you do now as a career? Yeah.
Okay, I've been practicing law since I got out of the Army. I already had my law degree. I came back, passed the bar, was admitted to practice in, I got out at the end of 1958, and I was admitted to practice in 1959, and I've been a practicing lawyer since 1959, long before you were born.
How did your service and experiences affect your life?
I think it helped me because it gave me an opportunity to travel. Remember, I was in Germany for 2 summers and 1 winter, and we were permitted to wear civilian clothes off base. I remember with some buddies of mine, we traveled we went down to Berchtesgaden, where we had a religious retreat for a week, and that was great. And then later on, we took a train, and we went to Innsbruck, Austria, Venice, Rome, and then back to Lucerne, Switzerland. And we did that in about 15 days. We took a trip to Paris. I spent a weekend in Holland, and Holland is so tiny, you can see the whole country in like 3 days. Got to England and spent a few days there and saw everything. Did not get locked up in the tower. And then I took a boat from Holyhead to Dublin, and I spent 2 weeks in Ireland. And I went back and I stood in the rooms, not the house, the rooms in which my grandparents had been born. I was the first Yank to come back to Ireland. It was a third world country, no electricity out in the countryside, no paved roads. They were all dirt roads, but they were in pretty good condition. And everybody the only electricity in the house was a portable radio. And the food was done on an open stove. The food was wonderful. That peat fire, and it looked where my family came from in Ireland, looked a lot like Bucks County, with the rolling hills, gentle countryside, lovely people, and they loved Americans even then. Yeah.
All right, that's it. Thank you for sharing your story with me.
Oh, I didn't give you very much. God, travel. We traveled. Oh, we were always on the go. I have one of those leather suitcases that an old girlfriend gave me, and every time I went to another country, I stuck a label on. It's got labels all over it. Yeah, I didn't get to Scotland. I didn't get to Wales. I stayed away from Scandinavia. Visited many places in all the major castles in Germany. They're just as pretty as they look in the pictures. They're just gorgeous. The German people liked us because if they didn't have us there, they won't be speaking Russian. Yeah. The Russians had come through there in Bavaria. In fact, they had taken Bavaria, but under the treaty, we took Bavaria back, and they got part of Berlin. Yeah, it was a good experience. I grew up a lot. Yeah, it was 2 years, but look at the traveling I did. Oh, yeah. Magnificent.
You went to a lot of places.
Yeah, I went to a lot of places. I wore out all my clothes. I came back I had a couple of suits made in London. They were the only clothes I had left. I was threadbare. I was in cities all the time. I would generally take my uniform off at 5 o'clock after dinner and put on, khakis and well, not khaki, but civilian khakis, and just a white button-down shirt. Yeah, you could do that. Being in Germany was not bad. I felt sorry for the guys who never went off base. They were dumb kids. Yeah, kids 18, 19, 20, 21, and they didn't appreciate what they could have done. They stayed on base and went down to the enlisted men's club and drank beer. If you could go in town, which was 2 miles away, they had good German beer and good entertainment and great food. Ah, one other thing. About 3 weeks before I came back from Germany, we were rotating troops all the time, and in the tank battalion, which was right next to us, along comes Elvis Presley. Yeah,
No way.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Came that little base that we had in Friedberg. Elvis came, and he was just a regular guy. He was not hoity-toity. Didn't have any special privileges. Uh, if you've seen pictures of him, if you've seen
Hmm.
in real life, he was better looking. Even in a plain drab uniform and short hair, he looked like a Greek god. He was a little on the shy side, um, especially around we Northerners, but he was a nice guy. He was very generous. He followed he followed us by a year down in Fort Hood, and that was when color televisions first came out. He was in a tank outfit which had one, two, three, four battalions. He bought a color television for each of the battalions, and he got to Germany, and his mother, I guess it was his mother, was ill. Uh, so he was allowed to move off base because his father and somebody else came over, and then the colonel, who was his manager, and the girls in town went crazy. Oh, if they could see him from a half mile away, that made their life. I saw Elvis. Um, he was a good soldier and rose to the rank of sergeant, which in 2 years is very difficult in the army. Yeah. He could have gone into special services. He could have, sung his way around Germany. Didn't do it. He was just a regular guy. He was driving a jeep for the company commander. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, it really was awesome. Yeah, nice guy. I was in the PX in Frankfurt one day. I only had another week or so to go, and I wanted to buy a Swiss watch. So I picked out one, and a voice from the back of me said, "Yeah, I think I'll take that. I'll take the same one." I turned around. It was Elvis. Yeah, yeah. He was God. He was a good-looking guy. Just yeah, in great shape. It's a shame he died so young, but those performers do it. Lawyers don't. I don't have to do drugs and all that. It wasn't. I started. I bought a camera, a very expensive German camera, and I took a lot of pictures, and I filled up 7 photo albums. And if I'd visit a town, I'd get a little brochure, the history of the town. I would write it in my book, and I have 7 bound volumes. No, 6. And if I went on vacation, I kept a daily diary, and I still have those. I can read them, actually.
Sounds good. Thank you. Sharing your stories.